Guten Yardening. It's early morning, and like the mosquitoes, we're outside. For the first time in over a week, it's actually overcast, so we don't expect the sun to be beating down, but we still want to get a great start to our day. For us, a great start starts in the garden. In this case, we're making a green smoothie. So this section of our garden is dedicated to the smoothie. We have here 3 different varieties of kale. Red Russian kale, lacinato kale, sometimes called dino kale, and green curly kale. We're also growing red curly kale in a different section of the garden. We also have our celery plants, and these aren't just planted here, we've planted them elsewhere because fresh celery is delicious and tastes nothing like it does in the store. And we have parsley. The parsley adds a nice sweetness to the smoothie if that's something you enjoy. Now, in our garden, we have to plant quite densely in order to maximize our growth potential. We started these kale plants from seedlings, and you can see right now, if we don't harvest just right, there could be the possibility of a lack of airflow through here. But when you're harvesting kale, you harvest from the bottom. The leaves from the bottom come off, and as the plant gets taller and continues to produce, that airflow issue goes away. So when we look underneath, you can see some of the leaves that have already been pulled off, and we're going to go right down to the bottom and break them off. If there are any spots in your kale leaf, there's no need to throw it away. You can simply take it off and put it in your compost. In our case, this is going right into the worm bin. So we look through, find the areas that need the most air movement, and we pick. Now, I'm only making a smoothie for the 4 of us today, and so what I'm going to gather is going to be commensurate with that amount. I like to mix the types of kale that I'm picking because they do have slightly different flavors. So here we see the dino or the lacinato kale, the green curly kale, and then we found from years past of growing, I'm going to move back here a little bit carefully, that the red Russian grows really quickly and well in our garden. Now, later in the season, you have to be really careful because we sometimes have some little green worms that get on the backs of these kale leaves. And I don't see any here, but that's why it's important, even if you're doing organic gardening, to wash thoroughly and inspect your leaves, unless you don't mind eating worms. Look at how beautiful these leaves are. So we've gathered all the kale we're going to need. But as you see in the last piece, this piece of lacinato kale looks quite good, but there's some sort of sac on the back that doesn't look so good. So we're going to remove that part and keep the rest. You have this many celery plants, you can see you can start harvesting quite early. The celery in the store tends to bunch up more than the celery we have here, but you can see if you hold it all together that it sort of has that same shape. I like to pull for the biggest pieces, and we go on the outside and we pick the celery. Now this celery has a strong flavor, much stronger than anything in the store. And so you don't need to have so much in your smoothie. But another thing that a lot of people don't know, and I don't know that I would necessarily do this with some of the store-bought celery, you can use every single bit of this piece. The tops are just as delicious and good as the bottom. So when I put this in the smoothie, It's all going in there. And finally, the parsley. This plant is looking beautiful right now. There's a lot of new and old growth. For parsley, the flavor is quite strong. And again, it's a sweet, more of a sweet flavor. So really this one you have to figure out how to do to taste. Some people like more, some people like less. But we'll be able to taste the flavor with even this amount. Typically, when I'm putting the parsley in the smoothie, I take my fingers along and remove the leaves and throw the stem into the compost. It's starting to rain even harder, but that's okay. We're at the last part of our spinach crop, so we've moved over just a bit in our garden. This spinach is already starting to bolt, as you can see, and actually that's the reason why we had to harvest every other part of our spinach crop this year. Spinach tends to bolt when the days get longer and the weather warms up. So we froze our initial spinach crop, and now we are here in the last. And you can see there's still great spinach left. And for spinach, similar to all the other green crops that we're growing here, you tend to harvest the outer leaves first, leaving the inside leaves to continue to grow. Now for spinach, for one person, it takes about 20 leaves. But in this case, because we have so much kale, we're not going to pick quite as much. But look at this spinach. Beautiful, green, and tasty. If you like greenery fresh, you can eat it right off the vine as well. I mean, I do. Step one in smoothie preparation is making sure your vegetables are washed very well. So I like to start by running the bucket full of water and then working them through the strainer. When I was outside earlier, I mentioned that you have to really inspect these leaves and wash them off, or else you might find these green worms. And there you go. You can see this is what they look like. And as the season progresses, you'll find more and more of these. So just simply pick them off. A lot of them come off in the water, but just inspect your leaves and make sure that you get rid of them. Well, the strainer's all set up, and I've removed some of the kale from their stems. The stems aren't going to go to waste. They're going to go directly into our compost or into our worm bin. They don't work so well in the smoothie. They don't taste as good, and they don't chop up as nicely. But you can see I have a small strainer, so that means that this is going to take multiple loads for the main green vegetables. The spinach doesn't need to have any of the stems removed because they blend up nicely. And the celery, well, I've broken it apart into its pieces, but again, we're going to use every single part of the celery. And the last little bit of vegetable to add to the smoothie is the parsley. As I said before, the important thing is removing it from its stem. And this is what our nice full blender looks like. Look at all that green deliciousness in there. So our next step is going to be to add the water. And typically I add about 3/4 of a cup of water so that it blends up nicely. Sometimes you gotta stop it and start it to make sure it all pulls down. To add some delicious flavor to your green blend and to make it into that smoothie consistency, we add a banana that's been frozen, takes very little time, and about a cup of frozen mango chunks. This will create that slushy consistency and have incredible flavor. The end result of your hard work is a delightful green smoothie. Oh yeah. Our smoothie garden is about 5 feet by 5 feet, which is large enough and planted densely enough to feed our entire family for the growing season with these smoothies. We supplement sometimes with other greens, but this works perfectly for us. You may find you need more or less space. You may find that you have to grow your plants in containers. Being creative is part of gardening, and it's perfectly fine to choose the method that works best for you. So, we hope you enjoyed the video today. We hope it was informational, and I can tell you the smoothie tasted great. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and remember, when you're with us, you're good to grow.